The alarm screamed through the galactic defense station like a wounded animal. Commander Zekthara's 4 eyes darted between the holographic displays, showing the impossible. The Vorthan swarm, the galaxy's most feared enemy, had broken through the outer defense grid. 23 heavily fortified stations had fallen in less than 6 hours. How many ships? Zekthara asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Scanner shows over 4,000 Vorthan vessels approaching. Commander, replied Lieutenant Mordak, her tentacles trembling as she worked the controls. They'll reach our position in 47 minutes. Zekthara felt his blood turn cold. 4,000 ships. The largest Vorthan force ever recorded was barely 800 vessels, and that had taken the combined might of 7 species to defeat. This was something else entirely. Where's our reinforcement fleet? He demanded. Still 3 hours away, sir. The nearest battle group is engaged with another Vorthan force near the Kelthras system. The bridge fell silent except for the persistent wailing of alarms. Every being present understood what this meant. The station held the primary hyperspace lane to the inner colonies. If it fell, the Vorthan swarm would have a clear path to the heart of galactic civilization. Billions would die. Sir, Mordak's voice cracked. We're receiving evacuation orders from High Command. Zekthara stared at the tactical display. The station's defenses were formidable, but against 4,000 ships? It would be like trying to stop an ocean with a seawall made of sand. Commander, there's something else, said Chief Scanner Operator Veldaz, his scaled hide changing color with stress. We're detecting one ship that didn't evacuate with the others. What? Zekthara turned to the display. Identify. It's a human vessel. Single occupant. The ship designation reads Defiance. A human. Zekthara had heard stories about them, of course. The newest species to join the Galactic Alliance, barely 200 years ago. They were considered brave, but reckless, always throwing themselves into impossible situations with disturbing enthusiasm. Most species found them slightly unnerving. Why haven't they evacuated? Zekthara wondered aloud. Unknown, sir. They're not responding to our hails. On the main screen, the small human ship moved into position directly between the station and the incoming Vorthan fleet. It was a mid-sized vessel, nothing special by galactic standards. Certainly nothing that could stand against 4,000 enemy ships. Has their pilot lost their mind? Mordak whispered. Zekthara watched the lonely ship take its position. Something about the way it moved spoke of determination, of a decision made and accepted. He'd served alongside human forces before and remembered their strange habit of never retreating, even when retreat was the only sensible option. Try hailing them again, he ordered. This time, the human responded. The view screen filled with the image of a human male, probably in his middle years by their standards. He had short dark hair and calm brown eyes that seemed far too peaceful for someone facing certain death. This is Captain Marcus Chun of the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance, the human said, his voice steady. I'm aware of the evacuation order. Captain Chun, Zekthara began. You need to leave this area immediately. The Vorthan force approaching is massive. Your ship cannot. Commander, Chun interrupted gently. I know exactly what's coming. I've been tracking them for the past 6 hours. Then, why haven't you evacuated? Chun was quiet for a moment, his eyes moving to something off-screen. When he looked back, there was something different in his expression, something that made Zekthara's spine tingle. Because someone needs to hold the line, Chun said simply. And, it looks like today, that someone is me. Captain, that's suicide. You can't possibly. Commander, with respect, you don't understand humans very well. Chen's voice remained calm, almost conversational. We have a saying, not one step back. It means sometimes you find a place worth defending, and you defend it, no matter what. The scanner alarm grew more urgent. The Vorthan fleet was 35 minutes out. Captain Chun, please be reasonable. One ship against 4,000 is not bravery, it's pointless sacrifice. Chun smiled, and somehow that smile was more unsettling than any war cry. You're thinking about this wrong, Commander. You're thinking about 4,000 ships against one. But that's not how humans see it. What do you mean? I don't see 4,000 ships. I see one target at a time. And that first ship? It's already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Zekthara felt a chill run through his body. There was something in the human's voice, a quiet certainty that defied logic. This wasn't the desperate bravado of someone facing death. This was something else entirely. Captain, your ship's weapons are impressive for your species, but against Vorthan shielding. Oh, you're thinking about the standard human loadout, Chun interrupted. The Defiance isn't exactly standard. As if responding to his words, the human ship began to change. Sections of its hull retracted, revealing weapon systems that definitely weren't in any Galactic Alliance database. The ship's energy signature spiked dramatically. What kind of modifications are those? Mordak breathed. Chin's smile grew wider. The kind that human engineers build when they're really, really angry. We've had 2 years to study Vorthan technology from the raids on our outer colonies. 2 years to figure out exactly how to kill them efficiently. Sir, Vel'Thuz called out urgently. The Vorthan fleet is changing formation. They've detected the human ship. On the tactical display, the approaching swarm began to shift. Ships that had been moving in a standard attack formation were now converging on the lone human vessel. Clearly, they intended to destroy this single obstacle before proceeding to the station. They're concentrating their entire force on you, Captain, Zekthara warned. All 4,000 ships. Good, Chin said, and his voice carried a note of satisfaction that made everyone on the bridge shiver. That means they're not shooting at you. But you can't possibly survive that assault. Probably not, Chin agreed cheerfully. But I don't need to survive it. I just need to slow them down long enough for your reinforcements to arrive. And, Commander? I'm very good at slowing things down. The Vorthan fleet was now 25 minutes away, and their lead ships were beginning to accelerate toward the human vessel. Chin's ship, the Defiance, moved forward to meet them. Captain, Zekthara said urgently, if you're determined to do this, at least let us help. We can provide covering fire. Negative, Commander. Keep your station's guns trained on the main force. When they get past me, and they will, you'll need every advantage you can get. When they get past you? Chin's expression grew distant for a moment. Commander, my daughter is in the inner colonies. She's 7 years old, and she likes to draw pictures of spaceships. Yesterday, she asked me if the monsters from space were real. He paused, his hands moving over his ship's controls with practiced precision. I told her that there are monsters, yes. But I also told her that there are people who fight monsters. And as long as there are people willing to stand up and fight, the monsters can't win. The Defiance was now moving at full speed toward the Vorthan fleet. Its modified weapons were charging, energy readings climbing to levels that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Today, I keep my promise to my daughter, Chin continued. Today, the monsters learn what happens when they threaten human children. Today, they learn why the rest of the galaxy calls us crazy. Zekthara found himself leaning forward, caught up in the human's quiet intensity. What are you going to do? Chin's smile was sharp as a blade. I'm going to show them why humans don't retreat. I'm going to show them what happens when they push us too far. And, Commander? Yes. You might want to record this. The Galactic Defense Academy is going to want to study what happens next. The first wave of Vorthan ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space toward the lone human vessel. Chin's ship danced between them with impossible grace, its pilot's reflexes appearing almost supernatural. How is he avoiding those shots? Mordak whispered. Humans have some of the fastest reaction times in the galaxy, Zekthara murmured. But this is something else. The Defiance returned fire. Its modified weapons systems unleashed streams of energy that seemed to bend and twist through space, seeking their targets with uncanny accuracy. The first Vorthan ship to be hit simply vanished in a flash of light. Impossible, Vel'Thuz stammered. Vorthan shields should have absorbed that blast. Unless, Zekthara said slowly, someone figured out their shield frequency. On screen, Chin was working his controls with deadly precision. Each shot from his ship found its mark, and each mark resulted in another Vorthan vessel disappearing from the tactical display. But there were so many of them, and more were arriving every second. Captain Chun, Zekthara called over the comm. You're doing incredible damage, but there are too many of them. I know, Chun replied, his voice calm despite the fact that his ship was now taking hits. But that's not the point. What do you mean? Commander, how long do Vorthan ships usually take to recharge their main weapons? Approximately 30 seconds. Why? And how long to coordinate a formation change across 4,000 ships? Perhaps 10 minutes for a major repositioning. Chen's ship spun through another barrage of enemy fire, its weapons never stopping their deadly work. Then, I'd say we have about 15 minutes before they get organized enough to rush your station all at once. Another group of Vorthan ships exploded under the Defiance's assault. The human ship was moving in patterns that seemed random but clearly weren't. Each maneuver put it in the perfect position to strike the next target while avoiding the maximum amount of incoming fire. He's not just fighting them, Zekthara realized. He's hurting them. Hurting them? Look at the formation. Every time he destroys a ship, the others move to compensate. He's controlling where they position themselves. On the tactical display, it was becoming clear. The Vorthan ships were unconsciously arranging themselves in response to Chen's attacks, forming a denser and denser formation as they tried to protect each other from his seemingly impossible accuracy. He's bunching them up, Mordak breathed. But why? Chen's voice came over the comm, and now it carried a note of grim satisfaction. Commander, you might want to clear all personnel from the observation decks facing this direction. Why? Because in about 30 seconds, 4,000 Vorthan ships are going to learn why human engineers are considered dangerously insane by every other species in the galaxy. Zekthara felt his blood freeze. Captain, what are you planning? Something that would have gotten me court-martialed if I'd tried it during peacetime, Chun replied. But, since it's wartime, and since I'm probably not going to survive anyway, I figure it's worth a shot. The Defiance suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers and began flying directly toward the center of the Vorthan formation. Every enemy ship in the fleet turned its weapons toward the small human vessel. Chun, what are you doing? Zekthara shouted. Something impossible, came the calm reply. Something that only a human would be crazy enough to attempt. The space around the Defiance erupted in weapons fire as every Vorthan ship in the fleet concentrated their assault on the lone human vessel. The ship's shields flared and failed almost immediately. His ship is taking massive damage, Veldaz reported. Hull breaches on multiple decks. He can't survive much longer. But Chen's ship didn't slow down. If anything, it accelerated toward the heart of the enemy formation. And now, Zekthara could see something that made his heart skip a beat. The human ship's reactor was overloading. He's going to ram them, Mordak whispered in horror. No, Zekthara said, understanding flooding through him. He's going to do something much worse than that. Chen's voice came over the comm one final time, calm and clear despite the chaos around him. Commander, tell the Defense Academy that the human approach to impossible odds is simple. We change the rules. The Defiance plunged into the center of the Vorthan formation, its overloading reactor building to critical mass. But, just before impact, something extraordinary happened. The ship didn't just explode. It opened a rift. Space itself seemed to tear around the Defiance as Chun activated some kind of experimental technology. The rift expanded rapidly, and the gravitational forces it generated began pulling the tightly packed Vorthan ships inexorably toward its center. What is that? Mordak screamed over the alarms. Zekthara could only watch in awe as human engineering achieved the impossible. It's an artificial black hole, he whispered. They weaponized space-time itself. One by one, then, in groups, then, in massive waves, the Vorthan ships were pulled into the rift. Their powerful engines were useless against the gravitational forces Chun had unleashed. In less than 5 minutes, the entire 4,000-ship fleet simply vanished into the artificial singularity. The space around the defense station was suddenly, impossibly empty. Status report, Zekthara managed. All Vorthan ships, gone, sir, Veldaz reported in a stunned voice. The rift is collapsing. No sign of Captain Chen's ship. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of instruments. 4,000 enemy ships had been destroyed by a single human pilot, and his impossible weapon. Sir, Mordak said quietly, we're receiving a message from the approaching reinforcement fleet. They want to know if we need assistance. Zekthara looked at the empty space where moments before an unstoppable enemy force had been advancing to destroy everything he'd sworn to protect. He thought about Captain Chen's daughter, drawing pictures of spaceships, safe in the inner colonies because her father had kept his promise. Tell them, he said slowly, that a human held the line. Tell them that defeat became impossible the moment Captain Marcus Chun decided it was. The view screen still showed the slowly dissipating energy signature where the rift had been. Somewhere in that fading light, a human had proven that one person with unshakable determination could indeed change everything. And, in the inner colonies, a 7-year-old girl would grow up never knowing that the monsters had been coming for her, because her father had made sure they never arrived. 3 days after the battle, Commander Zektharos stood in the war room aboard the Galactic Defense Headquarters, watching as admirals from 7 different species reviewed the tactical recordings. The holographic display showed the impossible scene again and again, one human ship destroying an entire Vorthan fleet. "Play it again," demanded Admiral Krestova, her crystalline features reflecting the light from the display. "I still cannot believe what I am seeing." The footage rolled once more. Captain Chen's ship dancing through impossible odds, herding 4,000 enemy vessels into position, then unleashing a weapon that defied every known law of physics. The artificial black hole that consumed an entire fleet. "The energy readings don't make sense," muttered Chief Science Officer Dalthek, his tentacles writhing in confusion. The human ship's reactor output was barely sufficient for standard operations. How did they generate enough power for space-time manipulation? "That's what we need to understand," Admiral Krestova said grimly. "If the humans have developed weapons of this magnitude, we need to know about it. All of it." Zektharos shifted uncomfortably. He'd filed his report 3 times now, each version reviewed and questioned by increasingly senior officials. The story never changed because the truth was simple. One human pilot had saved the entire inner colonies through sheer determination and technology nobody else had ever imagined. "Commander," Admiral Krestova turned to him. "Your report mentions that Captain Chun claimed his ship wasn't standard. What exactly did he mean?" "He said it was modified, Admiral. Weapons and systems that human engineers built when they were really angry." Those were his exact words. "Angry," repeated Science Officer Velmore, his scaled hide shifting color. "Human emotion drove them to create this impossible weapon." "It appears so, sir." The room fell silent as the various species processed this information. Most galactic civilizations develop their most advanced technologies through careful research and logical progression. The idea that raw emotion could drive innovation was disturbing to many of them. "There's something else," Zektharos continued. "During our conversation, Captain Chen mentioned that humans had been studying Vorthan technology for 2 years, ever since the raids on their outer colonies." "What raids?" Admiral Krestova's tone sharpened. Zektharos pulled up another file. According to Earth Defense Force records, the Vorthan swarm attacked 17 human colonies over the past 2 years. The attacks were dismissed by High Command as minor border skirmishes. "Minor?" Dalthek's tentacles curled in disbelief. If the Vorthans were testing human defenses, then they weren't minor at all, Admiral Krestova finished. They were reconnaissance missions. The swarm was learning how to fight humans. The implications hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. If the Vorthans had been specifically studying human capabilities, then the massive fleet that attacked the defense station hadn't been random. It had been targeted. "Admiral," Velmore spoke up hesitantly. "If the humans have been under Vorthan observation for 2 years, and if they've developed weapons like this in response, what else might they have created?" Before anyone could answer, an aide entered the war room at a run. "Admiral, urgent communication from the Terran Embassy. They're requesting immediate conference with the Defense Council." Admiral Krestova's crystalline features hardened. "Patch them through." The holographic display shifted, showing the image of a human female in diplomatic attire. She looked tired, but her voice was steady and professional. "Admiral Krestova, I'm Ambassador Sarah Chun, Earth's representative to the Galactic Alliance. I believe you've been reviewing the actions of my brother, Captain Marcus Chun." Zektharos felt a shock run through him. The brave pilot who'd sacrificed himself had been the ambassador's brother? "Ambassador Chun," the admiral replied carefully, "we're conducting a standard post-battle analysis. Your brother's actions were extraordinary. That's one word for it," Ambassador Chun said dryly. "Admiral, I need to inform you that the Earth Defense Council is calling an emergency session. We need to discuss certain developments in human military technology." "What kind of developments?" Ambassador Chun was quiet for a moment, her expression troubled. Admiral, when the Vorthans first attacked our colonies, they killed 12,000 civilians. Men, women, children. The attack on New Geneva was particularly brutal. She paused, gathering herself. Human engineers don't just build weapons when they're angry, Admiral. They build them when they're grieving. And we've had 2 years to grieve. The war room was completely silent now. Every species represented understood the implications of that statement. Ambassador, Admiral Krestova said carefully. Are you telling us that your brother's weapon was not unique? I'm telling you that the Defiance was the least advanced ship in our new experimental fleet, Ambassador Chen replied. Marcus volunteered for what we knew was a suicide mission because he wanted to field test our new technology against maximum odds. Dalthek's tentacles went completely still. Field test. We needed to know if our theories were correct. If our new weapons could handle the worst-case scenario. For 1,000 Vorthan ships qualified as worst case. Zekthara found his voice. Ambassador, how many ships like the Defiance do humans currently possess? Ambassador Chen's smile was sharp and humorless. As of this morning, approximately 800. By the end of the week, we'll have 1,200. Our shipyards have been working around the clock since the first colony attack. The war room erupted. Multiple voices began speaking at once, but Admiral Krestova's command voice cut through the chaos. Silence. She turned back to the human ambassador. Ambassador Chun, are you informing us that Earth has developed a fleet of ships capable of single-handedly destroying entire Vorthan formations? I'm informing you that we've developed a fleet capable of ending the Vorthan threat permanently, Ambassador Chen replied. The question is whether the Galactic Alliance wants our help, or whether you'd prefer to handle this threat using conventional methods. Your help. Velmore's scales had turned a pale shade of anxiety. What exactly are you proposing? We're proposing to win this war, Ambassador Chen said simply. The Vorthans have been hitting border worlds and outer systems for decades. They've killed millions across dozens of species. Everyone treats them like a natural disaster, something to be endured and defended against. Her voice grew harder. Humans don't accept natural disasters. We fix them. And we've figured out how to fix the Vorthan problem. Admiral Krestova leaned forward. Explain. The Vorthan swarm operates from a central hive mind located in their home system. Every raid, every attack, every strategic decision comes from that single point. Conventional wisdom says their home system is too heavily defended to assault. It is, Admiral Krestova confirmed. The combined fleets of all Alliance species couldn't penetrate the defenses around the Vorthan homeworld. Ambassador Chen's smile returned, and it was terrifying. Admiral, conventional wisdom didn't account for human engineering. We don't need to penetrate their defenses. What do you mean? We're going to do what my brother did on a much larger scale. We're going to change the rules of the game entirely. The display shifted, showing technical schematics that made everyone in the room gasp. Ship designs unlike anything any of them had ever seen. Weapons that violated fundamental assumptions about space combat. Defensive systems that seemed to bend reality itself. These are the plans for our new Titan-class vessels, Ambassador Chen explained. Each one is capable of what the Defiance accomplished. But that's not the remarkable part. What is the remarkable part? Dalthek whispered. The remarkable part is that we've figured out how to make these weapons scalable. The artificial black hole technology that destroyed the Vorthan fleet? We can now generate rifts large enough to swallow entire star systems. The war room was dead silent. The implications of what the human was saying were staggering. Ambassador, Admiral Krestova said very carefully. Are you suggesting that humans can destroy the Vorthan home system? I'm not suggesting it, Admiral. I'm stating it as fact. The question is whether the Galactic Alliance authorizes us to proceed. You're talking about genocide, Velmore said in horror. No, Ambassador Chen replied firmly. We're talking about ending a war that the Vorthans started when they decided to massacre human children. They've had decades to choose peace. They've chosen aggression instead. She paused, her expression softening slightly. Admiral, my brother died to save your station and protect the inner colonies. He did it because that's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. But we also believe in decisive action, meaning that if the Galactic Alliance authorizes this operation, the Vorthan threat ends next week. If not, we proceed on our own authority and ended the week after. The boldness of the statement was breathtaking. A single species, barely 2 centuries in the galactic community, was offering to single-handedly end a threat that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. What guarantees do we have that these weapons won't be turned on Alliance worlds? Admiral Krestova asked. Ambassador Chen looked genuinely surprised. Admiral, humans have been members of the Galactic Alliance for 200 years. In that time, have we ever betrayed an ally? Have we ever broken a treaty? Have we ever attacked anyone who wasn't actively trying to kill us? No, the Admiral admitted. Then, you have the same guarantee you've always had, our word. Which, I might add, has never been broken. Admiral Krestova looked around the room at the assembled officers and scientists. Every face showed the same mixture of awe and concern. Ambassador, assuming the Alliance Council approves this operation, what exactly would you need from us? Navigation data for the Vorthen home system, detailed intelligence on their defensive positions, and a formal declaration that this action is being taken in defense of all Alliance member species. That's all. Ambassador Chen nodded. That's all. Human forces will handle the rest. How many ships will you commit to this operation? All of them. Ambassador Chen said without hesitation. Every experimental vessel we've built. Every prototype weapon we've developed. Every human pilot willing to follow my brother's example. And if you fail? Ambassador Chen's expression grew distant for a moment. Admiral, 3 days ago, one human pilot with an experimental ship faced impossible odds to protect people he'd never met. He succeeded because failure wasn't an option. She looked back at the camera. Failure is still not an option. The Vorthens threatened human children. That was their mistake. Now they face the consequences of making enemies of a species that doesn't believe in no-win scenarios. The communication ended, leaving the war room in stunned silence. Finally, Admiral Krestova spoke. Commander Zekthara, in your opinion, are the humans capable of what they claim? Zekthara thought about Captain Chen's calm certainty in the face of certain death, the impossible grace of his ship's movements, the weapon that had defied physics and swallowed an entire fleet. Admiral, 3 days ago I would have said no. But, after watching one human do the impossible, he paused. I believe they'll do exactly what they promised. And I believe they'll succeed. Even though it means ending an entire species. The Vorthens made their choice when they started killing civilians, Zekthara said firmly. Captain Chun died protecting innocent people. If his species has the power to make sure no one else has to make that sacrifice, then I think we should let them use it. Admiral Krestova nodded slowly. Very well. I'll recommend to the Council that we authorize the human operation. As the meeting dispersed, Zekthara remained behind, staring at the technical schematics the humans had shared. Ships that could reshape space itself. Weapons that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolutes. An entire fleet of vessels like the one that had saved his station. And piloting them would be humans. People who treated impossible odds as personal challenges. Who modified the rules when the game was unfair. Who built weapons when they were angry and used them when they were determined. The Vorthens had no idea what was coming for them. But, then, again, neither had anyone else, until a single human captain had shown them what his species was truly capable of when pushed too far. In the inner colonies, a 7-year-old girl was drawing pictures of spaceships, completely unaware that her father's sacrifice had set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. Soon, there would be no more monsters from space. Because the humans were coming to deal with them once and for all. The human fleet assembled at the edge of Alliance space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Sarah Blackwood stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching as 1,200 experimental vessels took their positions in perfect formation. Each ship bore the scars of hasty construction and the gleam of technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Final systems check complete, Admiral, reported her tactical officer, Commander Torres. All vessels report ready for hyperspace jump. Blackwood nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the Vorthen home system. 6 months of planning had led to this moment. 6 months of turning grief and anger into the most advanced military technology the galaxy had ever produced. Open a channel to all ships, she ordered. The communication array came alive, connecting her to 1,200 human captains who had volunteered for what might be the most dangerous mission in galactic history. This is Admiral Blackwood. In 48 hours, Marcus Chun held the line against impossible odds to protect innocent people. He showed the galaxy what one determined human can accomplish when defeat is not an option. She paused, looking at the images of her fleet commanders. Men and women who had lost friends, family, entire communities to Vorthan raids. People who had spent 2 years building weapons that defied physics because conventional solutions weren't enough. Today, we hold the line for the entire galaxy. Today, we end the Vorthan threat permanently. And we do it the way humans always have, by changing the rules when the game is rigged against us. A chorus of acknowledgments came back from the fleet. 1,200 voices united in purpose. Begin hyperspace jump. Destination, Vorthan Prime. Space twisted around the human fleet as they vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of every species that had suffered under Vorthan aggression. Behind them, on stations and worlds across Alliance space, beings who had never believed in human capabilities watched and waited to see if this impossible species could deliver on their impossible promises. The journey through hyperspace took 18 hours. When the human fleet emerged at the edge of the Vorthan home system, they found exactly what intelligence reports had predicted, the most heavily defended system in the known galaxy. Mother of God, whispered Navigator Chun, no relation to Marcus, but carrying the same determined expression that seemed universal among humans facing overwhelming odds. The tactical display showed a system that was more fortress than star system. Massive orbital platforms surrounded the Vorthan homeworld. Defense stations the size of small moons guarded every approach route, and patrolling between them all were Vorthan ships by the tens of thousands. Count, Admiral Blackwood asked. Approximately 40,000 enemy vessels of various classes, Commander Torres reported, plus the orbital defenses, which are reading as substantial. Substantial is an understatement, muttered Chief Science Officer Park, studying her readings. Those defense platforms are generating energy signatures equivalent to small stars. And the firepower. How much firepower? Blackwood asked. Enough to sterilize the surface of a planet in under an hour. Each platform. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. The Vorthans hadn't just built defenses around their homeworld. They had created a killing field that could destroy entire fleets before they got within weapons range. Admiral, Torres said carefully, conventional assault would require at least 100,000 ships to have any chance of success. Good thing we're not conducting a conventional assault, Blackwood replied calmly. Signals, get me Captain Morrison on the Vindicator. The view screen shifted to show a middle-aged woman with graying hair and the kind of calm eyes that came from years of solving impossible engineering problems. Morrison here, Admiral. Are you seeing what we're seeing? 40,000 ships and enough orbital firepower to crack planets. Yes, I see it. Morrison smiled grimly. So, about what we expected based on intelligence reports. Are we proceeding with Plan Omega? Admiral Blackwood looked at the tactical display one more time. 40,000 enemy ships. Orbital defenses that violated most known laws of physics. A homeworld that was essentially one giant fortress. Captain Morrison, your assessment. Can we do this? Admiral, 6 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. But 6 months ago, we hadn't figured out how to weaponize space-time, generate artificial gravity wells, or build ships that can phase shift through normal matter. Morrison's expression grew distant. My daughter was on New Geneva when the Vorthans attacked. She was 8 years old. They killed her along with 4,000 other civilians because they wanted to test their new plasma weapons. Her voice hardened. So yes, Admiral, we can absolutely do this. And we will do this. All ships, prepare for Phase 1, Blackwood ordered. Morrison, you have the ball. The human fleet began to spread out into what appeared to be a standard battle formation. To any observer, it would look like they were preparing for a conventional assault, something that would be suicidal against the defenses they faced. But the humans weren't preparing for a conventional assault. Captain Morrison's ship, the Vindicator, began to accelerate toward the Vorthan defenses. As it moved, its hull began to shimmer and phase, using technology that the human engineers called quantum displacement. What is she doing? Commander Torres asked. Something that should be impossible, Admiral Blackwood replied. She's taking her ship partially out of normal spacetime. The Vindicator continued its approach, and the Vorthan defenses responded as expected. Massive energy beams lanced out from the orbital platforms, enough firepower to vaporize a conventional vessel instantly. The beams passed harmlessly through the phasing human ship. Physics violation confirmed, reported Science Officer Park in an awed voice. She's existing in a quantum state that's only partially interactive with normal matter. Can the Vorthans adapt their weapons to target phased ships? Not quickly. The technology required would take years to develop, even for them. On the tactical display, the Vindicator reached the heart of the Vorthan defense grid. Then, it did something that made everyone on every bridge in the human fleet hold their breath. It stopped phasing and began to glow. Morrison, what's your status? Admiral Blackwood called. Charging the quantum cascade generator. Morrison replied, her voice calm despite the fact that dozens of Vorthan ships were now converging on her position. 30 seconds to activation. Can you hold position? Morrison's ship shuddered under a barrage of enemy fire. Admiral, I've got 40 ships shooting at me, my shields are down to 30%, and my hull is taking direct hits. Pause. Of course I can hold position. I'm not going anywhere until this job is done. The human ship continued to take massive damage as it maintained its position in the center of the enemy formation. But Morrison had positioned herself perfectly, right in the geometric center of the Vorthan orbital defenses. Quantum cascade generator at full charge, Morrison reported. Admiral, you might want to clear the area. This is going to get messy. All ships, emergency withdrawal to minimum safe distance, Blackwood ordered. The human fleet pulled back just as Morrison activated her weapon. What happened next redefined everyone's understanding of what was possible. The Vindicator didn't explode. Instead, it began to expand. Not physically, but dimensionally. The ship seemed to grow larger and larger while remaining in the same position, as if space itself was being stretched around it. What are we looking at? Torres whispered. Localized space-time expansion, Park replied in amazement. She's creating a bubble of distorted reality around her ship. The expansion continued, and, as it grew, it began to affect the Vorthan defenses. Ships caught in the expanding field started to experience time dilation. Their movements slowed, then stopped entirely as they became trapped in regions where time moved at a crawl. The cascade effect is propagating through their formation, Park reported. Every ship and platform touched by the expansion field is being frozen in temporal distortion. Within minutes, the entire Vorthan defense grid was caught in Morrison's reality warping field. 40,000 ships hung motionless in space, their crews experiencing time so slowly that seconds stretched into hours. Morrison, report, Admiral Blackwood called. Mission accomplished, Admiral, came the reply, though Morrison's voice sounded strained. I've got them locked in temporal stasis. But I can't maintain this field indefinitely. How long can you hold it? Maybe 6 hours before the cascade field collapses. That's more than enough. All ships, initiate Phase 2. The human fleet moved forward, approaching the frozen Vorthan defenses. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history, because it wasn't really a battle at all. It was an execution. Human ships moved methodically through the temporal field, targeting the frozen enemy vessels with weapons designed specifically for this moment. Molecular disruptors that broke apart matter at the atomic level. Gravity bombs that compressed targets into neutron-dense material. Quantum torpedoes that deleted sections of spacetime entirely. One by one, the Vorthan ships simply ceased to exist. This is incredible, Commander Torres reported. We're eliminating their entire fleet without taking a single casualty. Don't celebrate yet, Admiral Blackwood warned. We still need to deal with their homeworld. As if summoned by her words, the massive planet at the center of the system began to glow. The Vorthan homeworld itself was stirring, its surface covered with weapon emplacements and shield generators that dwarfed anything on the orbital platforms. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups on the planet's surface, Park reported. They're preparing some kind of planetary defense weapon. What kind of weapon? Unknown. But the energy levels are concerning. If they fire whatever they're building, it could destroy our entire fleet. Admiral Blackwood studied the tactical display. The Vorthan homeworld was preparing to defend itself with something that could threaten even her advanced fleet. Time to move to Phase 3. Signal Captain Rodriguez on the Devastator, she ordered. The view screen showed a young man with the kind of intense focus that came from years of theoretical physics research. Before the war, Rodriguez had been working on experimental mathematics. Now he was in command of the most advanced ship in the human fleet. Rodriguez here, Admiral. I see the planet charging up. Are we moving to the final phase? Affirmative. How confident are you in the calculations? Rodriguez smiled. And it was the smile of someone who had spent months working on a problem that everyone else said was impossible. Admiral, 2 years ago the Vorthans killed my entire research team during the raid on Kepler Station. 17 of the brightest minds in human physics, murdered because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. His expression grew distant. I've had 2 years to work on this. 2 years to solve mathematical problems that most of my colleagues said were unsolvable. 2 years to figure out how to build a weapon that operates on principles that shouldn't exist. He paused. I'm very confident in the calculations. Proceed with Phase 3, Captain. In this war. The Devastator began its approach to the Vorthan homeworld, and, as it moved, it began to change. Sections of the ship rearranged themselves, revealing components that looked more like mathematical equations made manifest than conventional weapon systems. What exactly is Rodriguez planning to do? Torres asked. Admiral Blackwood watched the approaching ship with a mixture of pride and apprehension. He's going to solve the Vorthan problem permanently, by removing the problem from the equation entirely. I don't understand. Captain Rodriguez has figured out how to edit reality on a planetary scale. Park explained in an awed voice. He's going to delete the Vorthan homeworld from existence. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a thunderclap. Not destroy the planet. Delete it. Remove it from reality as if it had never existed at all. Is that even possible? Torres whispered. According to human mathematics, yes, Admiral Blackwood replied. According to everyone else's understanding of physics, absolutely not. The Devastator reached optimal position and began to activate its reality editing systems. On the planet below, the Vorthan planetary weapon was nearing full charge, preparing to fire a blast that could sterilize entire star systems. It was a race between two impossible technologies, each representing the pinnacle of their respective species' capabilities. The humans won. Rodriguez's weapon activated, and the Vorthan homeworld simply stopped being. Not destroyed, not exploded, not vaporized. It was there one moment, and the next moment it had never existed at all. The mathematical constants that defined its existence were rewritten, and reality adjusted itself accordingly. The planetary weapon that had been charging to fire at the human fleet ceased to exist along with everything else. The massive gravitational signature that had anchored the system vanished. Even the light that had been reflecting off the planet's surface was retroactively edited out of existence. Status report, Admiral Blackwood said quietly. Planet deleted from space-time, Park reported in a stunned voice. All Vorthan forces eliminated. The entire system is now empty. Where moments before had been the most heavily defended system in the galaxy, now there was only empty space, and the slowly dispersing energy signatures of weapons that no longer had targets. Signal all ships, Admiral Blackwood ordered. Mission accomplished. The Vorthan threat has been permanently eliminated. As acknowledgments came back from across the fleet, she thought about Captain Marcus Chun, who had started this sequence of events by refusing to retreat in the face of impossible odds. His sacrifice had shown the galaxy what one determined human could accomplish. Now his species had shown what they could accomplish when they worked together. The war that had threatened the galaxy for millennia was over, not ended through negotiation or gradual victory, but through the complete elimination of the threat itself. And it had taken the humans exactly 6 hours to accomplish what the rest of the galaxy had failed to do for centuries. Because sometimes, changing the rules wasn't enough. Sometimes, you had to rewrite reality itself. 3 months after the Vorthan homeworld ceased to exist, the Galactic Alliance Council convened for what would later be called the most significant session in galactic history. Representatives from 347 species gathered on the neutral station of Harmony Point to discuss what everyone was calling the human situation. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the human delegation section, watching as beings she had worked with for years struggled to make eye contact with her. The atmosphere in the great council chamber was thick with anxiety, suspicion, and fear. Chancellor Vectoron of the Altarian Republic called the session to order. His usually calm demeanor showed cracks of strain as he spoke. We gather today to address the implications of recent human military actions. Specifically, the complete elimination of the Vorthan species and their homeworld through means that our best scientists cannot fully comprehend. Ambassador Chen listened to the formal language that barely concealed the underlying panic. She understood their fear. In 6 hours, humanity had demonstrated the ability to delete entire star systems from existence. That kind of power would terrify anyone. The chair recognizes Ambassador Chun of the Terran Republic. Sarah stood, her movement causing a ripple of tension through the chamber. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, wondering if she represented salvation or the next threat to galactic peace. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I understand why you've called this session. You're afraid. A murmur ran through the assembly. Few species appreciated such directness. You're afraid because humanity has demonstrated capabilities that challenge your understanding of what's possible. You're afraid because we solved a problem that has plagued the galaxy for millennia, and we did it in a way that defied every conventional approach. She paused, looking around the chamber. Most of all, you're afraid because you don't know what else we can do, or whether you can trust us with the power we've shown. Chancellor Vectoron leaned forward. Ambassador Chen, can you blame us for that concern? Your species has demonstrated the ability to edit reality itself, to delete civilizations from existence. Surely you understand why this would cause alarm among other Alliance members. I absolutely understand, Sarah replied, which is why I'm here to answer your questions honestly and completely. Very well, the Chancellor said. The Keltheran delegate has requested to speak first. Ambassador Vorthek of the Keltheran Empire stood, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically. Ambassador Chun, our scientists have studied the recordings from the Vorthan system. What your ships accomplished should be physically impossible. How did you develop such technology? Sarah had expected this question. The same way we develop most of our advanced technology, through necessity, determination, and the willingness to question assumptions that everyone else accepts as immutable. That's not an answer, Vorthek pressed. We need to understand the principles behind these weapons. Why? The simple question caught the Keltheran delegate off guard. Why? Because the implications for galactic security are enormous. If other species could develop similar capabilities, then you'd have the same problem we had, Sarah interrupted. The need to defend ourselves against threats that conventional weapons can't handle. But the power you've demonstrated goes far beyond defense. Sarah nodded. Yes, it does. Because sometimes defense requires the complete elimination of the threat. The Vorthans weren't interested in coexistence or negotiation. They were a cancer that had to be cut out. And who decides what constitutes a cancer? Asked Ambassador Zilthara of the Centaurian Federation. Your species? Based on what authority? This was the heart of it, Sarah realized. Not fear of human technology, but fear of human judgment. Fear that humanity might decide other species were also problems to be solved. Ambassador Zilthara, in the 200 years since humans joined the Galactic Alliance, how many member species have we attacked? None. But how many treaties have we broken? None. But that doesn't. How many times have we used our military power against anyone other than those actively trying to kill civilians? Zilthara was silent for a moment. Never. But the capabilities you've demonstrated change everything. No, Sarah said firmly. They don't change anything about who we are or what we stand for. We're the same species that has spent 2 centuries protecting Alliance worlds from pirates, exploring dangerous sectors to expand the safe zone, and sharing our technology freely with anyone who asked. She gestured to the chamber around them. The life support systems keeping half of you alive in this station? Human-designed atmospheric processors. The hyperspace navigation computers that allow safe travel between systems? Based on human mathematics. The medical techniques that have extended lifespans across dozens of species? Developed in human research labs. The chamber was silent now, delegates remembering the countless ways human innovation had improved their lives. We've spent 2 centuries proving that we can be trusted with power. The fact that we now have more power doesn't change our fundamental nature. But it changes the consequences if you ever decide to use that power aggressively, Chancellor Vectoron pointed out. Sarah nodded. True. Which is why I'm here to propose a solution that should address everyone's concerns. What kind of solution? Asked Ambassador Koldar of the Draconian Hegemony. Sarah activated a holographic display showing a detailed technical schematic. This is the design for a monitoring system that we're calling the Galactic Peace Protocol. It's a network of automated stations that will monitor human military activities throughout our space. The delegates leaned forward, studying the design. These stations will be operated jointly by all Alliance member species. They'll have real-time access to our military communications, fleet movements, and weapons development. Any human ship that begins charging reality-altering weapons will trigger immediate alerts to every government in the Alliance. You're offering to submit to galactic surveillance? Ambassador Zilthara asked in surprise. We're offering to make our military activities completely transparent, Sarah clarified. Because we have nothing to hide, and no aggressive intentions toward Alliance members. What about non-Alliance species? Asked Vorthek suspiciously. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Species that aren't part of the Alliance haven't agreed to abide by galactic law. If they threaten Alliance members, they face the consequences of their choices. The same consequences the Vorthans faced? If necessary, yes. We won't allow another situation where civilian populations are slaughtered while governments debate the proper diplomatic response. Chancellor Vectoron studied the monitoring station designs. This is unexpected. You're willing to accept permanent oversight of your military capabilities. We're willing to accept transparent accountability, Sarah corrected. Because we understand that with great power comes great responsibility. And because we want our allies to sleep peacefully, knowing that human power will never be turned against them. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as delegates discussed this unexpected offer among themselves. Finally, Ambassador Telvorin of the Etherian Collective spoke up. Ambassador Chun, this transparency you offer, it would apply to all human military development? All of it. Every ship, every weapon, every experiment. Complete open-book policy with our allies. And in return? Sarah smiled. In return, you stop being afraid of us and start being grateful that we're on your side. Grateful? Ambassador, the Vorthans weren't the only threat out there. Our deep space scouts have identified at least 3 other hostile civilizations beyond the galactic rim. Species that make the Vorthans look peaceful by comparison. This caused an immediate stir. Several delegates began speaking at once until Chancellor Vectoron called for order. Explain, he commanded. Sarah activated another display, showing star charts of unexplored regions. The Devourers, a machine intelligence that consumes organic matter to fuel its expansion. The Shadowkin, energy beings that feed on the life force of entire planets. And the Amalgam, a hive mind that assimilates other species into its collective consciousness. The chamber fell deathly silent. Each of these threats has capabilities that would challenge conventional Alliance military forces. The Devourers alone operate a fleet estimated at over 1 million ships. How long before they reach Alliance space? Chancellor Vectoron asked quietly. Conservative estimates? The Devourers will reach our outer systems within 5 years. The others will follow within a decade. The implications hung in the air like a death sentence. The Alliance had barely survived the Vorthan threat, and only with human intervention. Now they faced multiple enemies, each potentially more dangerous than the last. Which brings me to the real reason I'm here, Sarah continued. Humanity isn't just offering transparency. We're offering partnership. What kind of partnership? Asked Ambassador Koldar. The kind where we work together to develop defenses against these new threats. Where human innovation combines with the knowledge and resources of every Alliance species. Where we build a military force capable of protecting not just our own space, but the entire galaxy. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who were beginning to understand the scope of what she was proposing. The Vorthans taught us something important. Sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to be so overwhelmingly powerful that no one dares threaten it. We're offering to help build that overwhelming power, not just for humanity, but for everyone. And if we refuse this partnership? Vorthek asked. Then, you face the Devourers with conventional weapons and hope for the best, Sarah replied bluntly. But I should mention that our simulations show conventional alliance forces lasting approximately 6 hours against a full Devourer assault. The chamber was quiet for a long moment as delegates absorbed this information. Finally, Chancellor Vectoron spoke. Ambassador Chun, this partnership you propose, what would it entail exactly? Sarah smiled. Joint research facilities where human scientists work alongside the best minds from every alliance species. Shared military commands where our strategic capabilities complement your tactical knowledge. Technology transfer programs where every breakthrough benefits everyone. And the reality-altering weapons remain under human control, but with complete transparency about their development and deployment. Think of us as the galactic immune system. We handle threats too dangerous for conventional responses. Ambassador Telvorin raised a concern. What guarantee do we have that humans won't eventually decide we're a threat to be eliminated? Sarah's answer was immediate and certain. The same guarantee you've always had, our track record. 200 years of friendship, cooperation, and shared sacrifice. The fact that we're here offering partnership instead of demanding submission. The reality that if we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done it already instead of proposing joint cooperation. She paused, her expression becoming more personal. But, most importantly, you have the guarantee that this is who we are. We're the species that produces people like Captain Marcus Chun, who died protecting strangers because it was the right thing to do. We don't change our fundamental nature just because our technology advances. Chancellor Vectoron looked around the chamber, reading the faces of hundreds of delegates who were grappling with the choice before them. Accept human partnership, and face the future with unprecedented power, or reject it, and face extinction alone. The Council will recess to consider these proposals, he announced. We will reconvene in 72 hours for a formal vote. As delegates filed out of the chamber, many stopped to speak quietly with Sarah. Some expressed gratitude for human sacrifices in past conflicts. Others asked technical questions about the new threats. A few simply wanted reassurance that the species that could delete planets would remain their protectors rather than their conquerors. Sarah answered all their questions with the same patient certainty that had characterized human diplomacy for 2 centuries. Because at its core, the choice before the galaxy was simple. Trust the species that had spent 2 centuries earning that trust, or face an uncertain future alone. And, deep down, everyone in the chamber knew there was really only one choice that made sense. The humans had held the line against impossible odds once before. Now they were offering to hold it again, for everyone. All the galaxy had to do was let them. 5 years after the Galactic Peace Accord was signed, Admiral Marcus Chin Jr. stood on the observation deck of the massive Joint Species Research Station called Harmony 1, watching human and alien engineers work side by side on technologies that redefined the possible. The station itself was a testament to what cooperation could achieve. Part human innovation, part Altarian precision, part Kelthran artistic vision, all bound together by a shared commitment to protecting the galaxy. Admiral, his aide Commander Reyes announced, the morning briefing is ready. Marcus nodded, taking one last look at the construction bays where the new Guardian-class vessels were taking shape. Ships that combined human reality manipulation technology with alien defensive systems and tactical computers. The ultimate expression of galactic cooperation. He made his way to the briefing room, where representatives from 17 different species waited. The morning briefing had become a tradition at Harmony 1, a daily sharing of intelligence, research updates, and strategic planning that kept the entire galaxy informed about potential threats. Good morning, everyone, Marcus said as he entered. What's our status today? Dr. Velteron, the Altarian xenobiologist who served as the station's science coordinator, activated the holographic display. Admiral, we have significant developments on 3 fronts. First, the Devourer fleet. The display showed a star map with red markers indicating enemy positions. Long-range scouts confirm the Devourers are 18 months ahead of schedule. They'll reach our outer perimeter systems in 3.5 years, not 5. How many ships? Asked Commander Zektoth, the Kelthran tactical analyst. Current estimates suggest 1.2 million vessels of various classes, plus manufacturing ships that can convert asteroid fields into new fleet elements. A sobering silence fell over the room. Even with 5 years of preparation, those were staggering numbers. Second development, Dr. Velterun continued. The Shadowkin have made first contact with the Theta Sector colonies. This drew immediate attention. The Shadowkin were energy beings that fed on life force, and their first contact with any species was usually their last. Casualties? Marcus asked. None, Dr. Velterun replied, and the surprise in her voice was evident. The Shadowkin attempted to drain the life energy from the human colonists on Kepler-7, but something unexpected happened. What? The humans fought back. Not with weapons, with willpower. Somehow, they resisted the Shadowkin feeding process through sheer mental determination. Commander Zektotha's scales shifted color with amazement. That should be impossible. Every species the Shadowkin have encountered has been helpless against their life-draining abilities. Except humans, apparently, Dr. Velterun said. The colonists not only survived, they actually drove off the Shadowkin advanced scouts. First time in recorded history that's happened. Marcus felt a familiar surge of pride in his species. Leave it to humans to find a way to resist something that should be unresistible. Third development is perhaps the most significant, Dr. Velterun continued. We've made a breakthrough in unified field theory. The Joint Human Etherian Research Team believes they've found a way to create stable reality fields. Explain, Marcus requested. Dr. Thalvan, the Etherian physicist, stepped forward. Her translucent form shimmered as she spoke. Admiral, we've discovered how to generate localized areas where physical laws can be adjusted. Not deleted like human weapons do, but modified to favor defensive operations. What does that mean practically? It means we could create zones where enemy weapons simply don't work, where hostile ships move slower than light speed regardless of their engine capabilities, where the fundamental forces that power devourer technology cease to function. The implications were staggering. A defensive technology that could neutralize any threat by making their weapons irrelevant. How large can these fields be? Asked Commander Morthek, the Draconian strategic planner. Theoretically, system-wide. We could protect entire star systems by making them functionally impossible for hostile forces to operate in. That's incredible, Marcus said. When can we begin implementation? The first prototype generators should be ready for testing within 6 months. Full deployment across critical systems within 2 years. Marcus nodded, making mental notes for the strategic updates he'd need to send to Earth Command and the Alliance Council. This breakthrough could change everything about how they approached galactic defense. Any other developments? Actually, yes, said Analyst Vorkel from the intelligence section. We've received some unusual communications from beyond the galactic rim. Species we haven't encountered before, requesting assistance. Assistance with what? Vorkel activated another display showing deep space transmission logs. Apparently, word has spread about what happened to the Vorthan Empire. These species claim they're facing their own extinction-level threats and want to know if the reality shapers, their term for humans, can help them. Marcus studied the communications. Desperate pleas from civilizations facing annihilation, all asking for help from the species that had demonstrated the power to delete entire systems from existence. How many requests have we received? 47 so far, from species as far as 3 galaxies away. Admiral, we appear to have developed something of a reputation. What kind of reputation? Commander Zektoth answered. According to the transmissions, humans are now considered the guardian species of the local galactic cluster. Apparently, there are legends spreading about the people who protect those who cannot protect themselves. Marcus felt a strange mixture of pride and responsibility. His father had died holding the line against impossible odds to protect innocent people. Now, somehow, that single act of heroism had grown into a galactic mythology about human protectiveness. What's the Alliance Council's position on these requests for help? He asked. They're leaving it up to us, Dr. Velterun replied. The official position is that human military capabilities are too valuable to risk on distant conflicts. But the final decision rests with human command. Marcus considered this. 47 civilizations facing extinction, all looking to humanity for salvation. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans seem to specialize in handling. Vorkel, analysis. Are these legitimate threats or attempts to draw our forces away from defending Alliance space? Analysis suggests they're legitimate, Admiral. The energy signatures and threat descriptions match known patterns of hostile expansion. These civilizations genuinely appear to be facing extinction. Recommendations? The room was quiet for a moment as various species considered the implications. Finally, Commander Zektoth spoke up. Admiral, from a purely tactical perspective, it would be better to let these distant threats eliminate each other rather than expend our resources on conflicts that don't directly affect Alliance security. And, from a moral perspective? Marcus asked. Dr. Thalvan answered. From a moral perspective, we have the power to save billions of innocent lives. The question is whether we have the right to refuse. Marcus smiled. Spoken like someone who spent 5 years working alongside humans. You're starting to think like we do. Is that good or bad? Dr. Thalvan asked. It's human, Marcus replied. We don't leave people behind when we have the power to help them, even when it's tactically disadvantageous. He made his decision with the same certainty that had characterized his father's final stand. Vorkel, prepare response communications to all 47 requesting civilizations. Inform them that the Galactic Alliance Guardian Fleet will provide assistance to any species facing extinction-level threats. All of them, sir? Vorkel asked in surprise. All of them. We're not going to pick and choose who deserves to survive based on strategic value. Sir, Commander Reyes interjected. That's going to require a massive commitment of resources. We'd be operating across multiple galaxies simultaneously. Then, we'd better start building more ships, Marcus replied cheerfully. Dr. Velteron, how quickly can we scale up Guardian-class production? With full Alliance cooperation? We could have 50 Guardian fleets operational within 18 months. Make it happen. Commander Zektoth, I want strategic assessments for all 47 conflict zones. We need to understand exactly what kinds of threats we're dealing with. Sir, may I ask why you're committing to such an extensive operation? Zektoth inquired. Marcus thought about his father, alone in space facing 4,000 enemy ships with nothing but determination and experimental technology. He thought about the stories his mother had told him about that final conversation, where Marcus Chen Sr. had explained that sometimes you find a line worth holding. Because 5 years ago, my father showed the galaxy what one human could accomplish when he refused to let innocent people die. Today, we're showing the galaxy what humans can accomplish when we have the resources to back up our convictions. He gestured to the mixed species team around him. But we're not doing this as humans alone. We're doing this as the Galactic Alliance, multiple species working together to protect those who can't protect themselves. This is what we've been building toward for 5 years. Dr. Velteron nodded thoughtfully. A galaxy where no one faces extinction alone. Exactly. Where every species knows that if they're threatened by forces beyond their ability to handle, they have allies who will stand with them. Even species we've never met. Commander Reyes asked. Especially species we've never met, Marcus replied. Because helping strangers is what separates civilization from barbarism. The briefing continued for another hour as they planned the logistics of the most ambitious military operation in galactic history. 47 different conflicts. Threats ranging from machine intelligences to energy beings to hive minds. Civilizations scattered across multiple galaxies, all depending on an alliance of species that had learned to combine their strengths. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Thalvan approached Marcus privately. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. When your father held the line against the Vorthan fleet, he was protecting people he'd never met. People who might never even know his name. Why do humans do that? Marcus considered the question that had been asked about his species countless times over the past 5 years. Because we believe that protecting innocent people is never about what they can do for you in return. It's about what kind of species you choose to be. And what kind of species have you chosen to be? Marcus looked out through the observation port at the construction bays where ships from dozens of species were being built with human technology to protect civilizations they'd never heard of. The kind that holds the line, he said simply. No matter how impossible the odds, no matter how distant the threat, no matter how many people think we're crazy for trying. Dr. Thalvan was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud. I hope so. But, more than that, I hope he'd understand that what he started that day didn't end with the Vorthons. It became something bigger. A promise that no one in this galaxy, or any other, has to face extinction alone. 6 months later, the first Guardian fleets departed Alliance space for distant galaxies where civilizations waited desperately for help that, according to every conventional calculation, shouldn't be coming. But humans had never been good at conventional calculations. They'd always been better at keeping impossible promises. And, across the galaxy, children of dozens of species grew up learning the same lesson that Marcus Chin Jr. had learned from his father's sacrifice, that somewhere out there, people were holding the line against the darkness. People who would never retreat, never surrender, and never let the monsters win. Because that's what Guardians do. They hold the line. Forever.